Welcome to the HRchat podcast, bringing the best of the HR and talent communities to you.
Welcome to this special episode of HRchat podcast. I'm your host, Bill Banham, and today we are very lucky to be joined by Toronto-based Kathleen Teixeira. Kathleen is a manager of talent acquisition at OLG. She's a member of the talent board, and she's a public speaker who educates HR pros and leaders on employer branding, social media recruitment, and personal branding. This is a special episode because it's focusing on DisruptHR Toronto, which is happening on the 1st of December 2016, and Kathleen is one of the organisers there. Kathleen, welcome to HRchat.
Thanks, Bill.
So let's jump straight in with some of the questions. Firstly, please tell our listeners a bit about yourself, your career background, and how you came to be your current role at OLG.
Sure. So I worked as a recruiter for a market research company while I was in university. And, during my time in school, platforms like Facebook and Twitter had just launched. And so, after I graduated university, my first jobs were really working in public relations and in social media. So shortly after that, I was in touch with a recruitment agency that really specialized in public relations. And that was an opportunity to really help me find a job. Instead, what happened was they offered me a position as a recruiter, supporting sort of marketing and advertising industry in Toronto. So while working on the recruitment agency side, I guess I had realized that the way that we were communicating had changed thanks to things like social media, and so inevitably the way that we looked for jobs had to be changing as well. So during this time, I actually launched Canada's first social recruiting conference that took place in Calgary. And we flew social recruiting experts from the UK, from the US, and across Canada to really lead these hands-on workshops with HR professionals. At that point, that's when I joined Indigo, which was my first opportunity working as an in-house recruiter. And there I focused on mostly corporate recruitment, retail recruitment across Canada, and I focused a lot on some of the harder to fill roles in some of the remote locations in Canada. And that's where I was really able to kind of leverage social media and things like employer brand to help attract talent for a couple of the locations in the country. During my time at Indigo, I was really ramping up with the networking. I'm a firm believer that networking is critical to your career no matter what industry you're in, really. But I've always made networking a priority, which is why I invest so much of my personal time, both on social media and attending and organizing events. But it was really through networking that I was introduced to the opportunity at OLG and has landed me in my position here now.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So give our listeners a bit of an insight into your average working week as manager of talent acquisition at OLG.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess, in my current role, I've had to build a talent acquisition function from the ground up. And so, the opportunity here was really moving to a centralized model of HR. And so building the talent acquisition center of excellence, I've spent the last year and a half doing just that. And so that can be a number of things, developing the end-to-end recruitment process, which is constantly being looked at for improvement. I hired a team of amazing recruiters to support our head office in Sault Ste. Marie and in Toronto. We looked at rewriting policies, revamping recruitment processes, developing new tools, also launched a new applicant tracking system, and getting ready to launch our new career site very soon. I'm also working on, projects like employer brand, developing an external talent community, starting to work on a targeted recruitment strategy to support our larger D&I strategy. But I guess when I'm not doing project-related work, I'm recruiting. I'm getting to know our business, and I'm attending a lot of networking events, doing public speaking. So I guess an average work week as manager of talent acquisition at OLG can look like a number of things, but it's probably the best way to put it.
Great, thank you. This is a special episode because we're going to be focusing on DisruptHR Toronto. But before we get there, you just you evoked something in my mind I'm kind of fascinated about. When I got back from a gap year many years ago from Toronto back, and I moved to London, I went out and I started looking for my first proper job, if you like, and I almost got recruited as a recruiter myself, and I'd be fascinated to know from you, somebody who does recruit recruiters, what do you look for, personality wise, skill set wise, when you're trying to hire the best potential recruiters?
Yeah, so I mean, having the experience as a recruiter, there's really nothing, having had the actual experience in working, whether it's high volume recruitment, agency side or corporate side, I think there's value in both. I think there's certainly something special in terms of agency recruiters. There's just a different type of hustle there, at least I've found. But I think it's more, it's a mindset. And I'm always looking for recruiters that think about recruitment in not so much a tactical or a transactional way, but people who can really understand the value of talent acquisition and recruitment for an organization, really think about it as, probably the single most important thing you can do in business is hiring the right people. And so for me, I think it's really a mindset and folks that think about recruitment and are doing recruitment all the time, whether, it's online or attending networking events or, just their day-to-day in conversation with family and friends. It's, recruitment is really something that we're doing all the time. And so I think that's really what I look for are folks that are, that come with that kind of mindset.
Great, thank you. Thank you for indulging me there. That's it was it was a side question, but I'm fascinated.
Good. I'm glad I could.
Okay, now let's get down to it. We're talking about DisruptHR Toronto. Mm-hmm. You're one of the three organisers of DisruptHR Toronto. The others being the awesome Jeff Waldman and the HR Gazette's very own Tim Baker. Tell us a wee bit about why you decided to bring DisruptHR to Toronto.
Yeah, so, this is our third, this is going to be our third event, our third DisruptHR in Toronto. And, when Jeff actually approached me about, supporting the launch of DisruptHR in Canada, I jumped on the opportunity, I think for a couple of reasons. One being, the fact that I had kind of, I was really proud of having launched Canada's first social recruiting conference. So there's something about firsts in Canada that kind of that I'm sort of drawn to. So, I think that was kind of the first obvious reason. The other one was really, the fact that the HR community in Toronto is extremely smart and extremely supportive, and there's always something to learn and somebody new to meet. So I feel very fortunate to be part of this community, and I think that it's important to host events like this to really, bring people together and share sort of experiences. So I think, there's a lot of room for improvement in HR, and there are so many folks in the city that have done some really amazing work. And DisruptHR really offers these folks a platform to share their success stories, and that'll really allow us to sort of collectively move the needle in HR.
Listeners, the Gazette is a media partner with DisruptHR Toronto, so full disclosure there. But it's awesome. I've been lucky to go to the last couple, and if you're on the fence about whether or not you should come along, please do so, because you'll get loads out of it.
Absolutely.
So that takes me nicely on to my next question, and that is, what makes the DisruptHR formula unique?
Yeah, so, I think what makes DisruptHR challenging for even some of the most seasoned speakers is really what makes it so unique, and that's really the format. So, the slides rotate every 15 seconds, so you really only get 20 seconds, or 20 slides rather. And, I love the idea of teaching or inspiring the audience around something, but very quickly. So I guess the speaker's entire talk is essentially an aha moment. And so I think that's what really makes it unique.
And apart from what I was just espousing a moment ago, why do you think HR pros and leaders should attend Disrupt HR Toronto?
Yeah, so, I think to echo some of the comments that I made earlier, I think there's a lot of room for improvement in all areas of HR. I think that HR really has its roots in things like administration and filing and personnel and compliance. But HR has really evolved in complexity, and I think there's a lot more involved in things like business forecasting, future and current business success. So I think the role of HR has really evolved into something very different. So for HR professionals or anybody that's really interested in the business of HR, should really attend DisruptHR Toronto, because I think they'll learn how to get more involved in the success of the organization by evaluating, more than just hiring and firing practices.
Tell us now a bit about the format for this year's Disrupt HR Toronto, in terms of the number of speakers, what networking opportunities there'll be, what time it starts, what time it finishes, what people can generally expect from the evening.
Yeah, so we have 12 speakers. Again, each speaker only gets 5 minutes. The event starts generally 5:30 to about 9 o'clock. We've sold over 250 tickets already for this event.
Wow.
We've got some amazing sponsors, including XREF, Career Builder, Ritual, Hire, of course, our amazing event venue, the Concert Hall, and McLean and Company. The Concert Hall, for those of you that don't know, is also the Masonic Temple, which is an iconic Toronto location. So I think that, you guys are certainly going to love this place. We've got partners like yourselves through the HR Gazette, and which, really allows us to get our content out to a much wider audience. So for folks that are, can attend or cannot attend, they can always catch up with some of the content later. So we're really thankful for the partnership with the HR Gazette. We also have a really great giveaway from a local Toronto startup called Forte. So really interesting, kind of giveaway there. I'm not going to share too much about that. So anyway, all of that to say that the number one feedback that we've really received from the two events that we've hosted to date is really the value that the attendees get from the networking and the value that our sponsors get from the platform. So, we're attracting folks from all areas of HR. It represents a variety of industries, and everyone from students to CEOs. And again, the networking then continues online on Twitter. We have a growing Facebook community. Our attendees and sponsors are sharing things on Instagram and on LinkedIn. So, joining the conversation online using our hashtag DisruptHRTO will really give you a good snapshot of what to expect for the next event.
Okay, here's a tougher question for you.
Yeah.
Which two or three speakers are you most looking forward to seeing and hearing from, and why?
So, we received a ton of submissions this year. I think we were close to 40. And so it's not easy to have to pare it down to 12. But I'm looking forward to all of them, of course. I mean, I was involved in the selection, and so I'm excited to hear from all of the speakers. I think I'm really looking forward to returning speaker, Ryan Porter. His talk is called Job Ads Are Stuck in the 90s, Doing the Macarena. I think, we can probably all agree that if we held our job postings next to each other, they look exactly the same if we stood a few feet away. And so I think, like I said earlier, the way we communicate has changed, the way we look for jobs have changed, what's important to us in a job has changed, and it's never been easier to apply for jobs. So, I guess the gap for me is, why are job postings still the same? Or maybe, do they need to change, and why? So anyway, Ryan's talk was the number one watch talk across all Disrupt HR videos from last year. So I know that he's going to fire up the audience. I'm really looking forward to that one. I'm also looking forward to a talk by Roy Tran, and his talk is called Stop Dating Top Talent. And as a recruiter, I think, I've always joked about the similarities between kind of dating or matchmaking and recruiting. But, I also think that we live in a time of buzzwords like top talent and disrupt. Go figure, maybe we need to find a new name. But I think that Roy's talk is really going to remind us that, as recruiters and as organizations, we should really be looking for right talent and kind of challenge our way of thinking. And do we always need top talent, or what does top talent even mean? So I'm certainly interested in his talk as well.
Great, thank you. Rob Catalano, if you're listening to this, shameless plug for you too, sir.
Yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to this as well. Yeah, on performance reviews.
Okay, we're heading towards the end of this particular episode, so thank you very much. Before we wrap things up, a couple more questions for you. Firstly, which events will you be attending or speaking at in 2017, and why?
Sure. So, I feel like I still have a ton of events to get through before the end of this year. We've got a couple of them happening in December. But I am looking forward to the HRPA conference. That's happening February 1st to 3rd, I believe. I'm also seriously considering at this point attending the World Employer Brand Day, which is held in Prague. That's April 27th through the 28th. HR Tech has always been on my list the last couple of years. Unfortunately, I have never attended, but I think the HR technology space is very interesting to me, and there's a ton of stuff happening there, so that's something that I certainly want to attend. I'm always looking forward to attending the Women's Executive Network events. Those are always very good. But anyway, I do a lot of networking, usually 5+ networking events a month. I can't keep up with them all. But in terms of speaking, I have a couple of speaking engagements lined up through a couple of MBA and university and colleges across the GTA, and those are coming up in the new year. So, keeping busy. Lots of events.
Great, thank you. For our listeners not in the GTA is the Greater Toronto Area.
Right.
Just finally, no worries. Just finally, how can our listeners learn more about you?
Sure, yeah. So, I'm all over social media at Kathleen Toronto. So that's my handle on Snapchat, on Instagram, on Twitter. You can find me that way on LinkedIn and on Facebook as well. LinkedIn and Kathleen Teixeira might just be easier. I don't know. But you can pretty much find me across all social media. And, I guess even for some more information on DisruptHR, the website there is disrupthr.co/Toronto. And all of the links to my social media are on there as well.
Did you say disrupthr.co/Toronto?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure that our listeners have got it.
Thank you.
Well, Kathleen, that takes us to the end of this particular podcast. So thank you so much for being our guest today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. I'd be happy to come back anytime.
And we'll take you up on that. Listeners, until next time, I've been your host, Bill Banham, and this has been the HR Chat podcast.
Thank you for listening to the HR Chat podcast, brought to you by the HR Gazette.